Okay, hello. Welcome to Belonging by Design, a district systems change case study presented by Tim Viegas and Carolyn Teagland from the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education. I am Sarah Bleeg, a SIP program coordinator, and I'm honored to be your moderator for today's session. First, a few logistics. This session will be recorded. It will be archived on our conference agenda page for the next 30 days. And then after that, you'll be able to access it on our SIP website, which is sipimpact.org, under our archived virtual events. We'll have closed captioning available just by clicking on the CC button that should be somewhere here on the bottom corner of your screen. The interpretation icon in the same area will provide access to Spanish translation. I know we were waiting for our Spanish translator to jump from one session to another, so it might take just a moment for that channel to be open, but you should see it along that same bottom toolbar in your Zoom screen. Please ensure your volume is muted to avoid distractions while presenters speak, but we do encourage you to engage in the chat with others, and if you're comfortable with your camera on, we love to see your faces. And with that, Carolyn and Tim, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey friends, how's everyone feeling today? Give me an emoji in the chat so that we can get that chat going. Um, I would like to introduce myself and Carolyn can introduce yourself, Carolyn. But I'm Tim Viegas, Chief Growth Officer at the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education. I've been with MCIE since 2020, so it started my sixth year in August, and it's just no day is a bad day, right, Carolyn?
That's right. Hashtag no bad days.
That's right.
I'm Carolyn Teaglin. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education. I've been with the MCIE since 2022.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, well, we're so happy to be here. We love our friends at supporting innovative practices, and we were excited to be able to present today. Today, we are talking about district and school systems change, and we have some specific examples of the tools that we use with schools. And what we would love for you to take away from this session is um, a framework for moving from fragmented inclusive education efforts to what what we like to do with districts, which is a coordinated systems change effort. Um, you're going to walk away with a very, very short implementation plan, but hopefully something that you can walk away from and do, you know, uh, in the next 30 days. And uh, just steal our frameworks so that you can start having this kind of process for your own school or district. And of course, we are a resource. We would love to talk with you more if this work is something that you want to do. Anything you wanted to add to that, Carolyn, before we move on?
No, I think we're good. Thanks, Tim.
All right, great.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're going to start first talking about belonging, but I wanted to put a little context around it because we are going to talk about two school systems in particular that have been engaged with MCIE's technical assistance process. And the one system we're going to talk about is the school system that I spent 30 years as an educator in, and was that's how I came into the work of inclusive practices as a younger educator. Our system was flagged by the Maryland State Department of Education because we had very poor outcomes for learners with disabilities, particularly for those with the most complex support needs. We were a district that had segregated programming that the majority of students with disabilities were in. We had center-based programs on both sides of our district, and about 50% of our kids with disabilities were included in general education 80% or more of their day. But the vast majority were in some kind of segregated program, either resource programming or in a segregated setting that was outside of their neighborhood school. So when the State Department approached us They encouraged us to work with MCIE to begin the systemic change process, and we moved from being a highly segregated system to a system that now boasts some of the highest inclusion rates in the state of Maryland. So you'll see our data later in this program. But at the start of this work, I didn't come into the work because I was an inclusionist. I came into the work as the executive director for elementary school education in my district, and the assistant superintendent at the time pulled me into her office and basically said to me, we're working with the Maryland Coalition for Inclusive Education to improve outcomes for students with disabilities and to return them to their neighborhood schools and to the general education classrooms to be educated with their age appropriate peers. And you're in charge. So that's how I started the work of inclusion in my district, and it became the most impactful work of my career, and it was definitely a turning point in terms of my mindset about belonging and inclusion and all those things that are so important for children and really impact their trajectory as learners. So we're going to start with this idea of belonging being at the base of everything. So we talk about belonging being the feeling of security and support when there's a sense of acceptance, inclusion, and identity for a member of a certain group. So that all learners are connected to their peers, that they feel known, seen, and heard by others, that they're invited, welcomed, and accepted, and that they are involved, supported, and needed in all aspects of schooling, both both in the educational process as a member of their grade level or content area where they're being instructed, and as well as being a member of their school community. So we like to use this graphic. The first thing that has to happen if you're going to be included is you have to be present in the neighborhood school that you would attend if you did not have a disability. The neighborhood school where your siblings go, where your neighbors go. At first you have to be able to be in that school and be present. And then presence leads to that ability to be a true member of your grade level community. And that it's not just membership, you're not just a name on the roster, that you have this true sense of belonging, that you're known, heard, and seen and valued for your unique talents and gifts. And that membership and belonging is the basis for participation and engagement to then happen. That without feeling like a belonging member of your school community, you'll not be able to be a full participant and fully engaged in the learning process. And that those two things, membership and belonging and participation and engagement, must happen in order for the learning to occur. And a lot of times in education, we leap right to the learning, particularly in this world of high stakes. We're all being held accountable for very high stakes accountability systems. And we tend to leap over sometimes this idea of membership and belonging and participation and engagement because we're so distracted by getting the learning done. So really finding those things as the core things and the things that we work on first in order to ensure that true learning actually occurs. And then this idea of belonging and certainty. And that's the sense that your belonging is tentative or up for negotiation or always at stake, that you're not necessarily secure in that membership in that classroom, in that community. And that if you feel belonging uncertainty, you're more likely to be disengaged from school. You will fail to build those positive relationships, and you're going to interpret negative experiences as deliberate exclusions. So that belonging uncertainty is greatest when there is a question about the ability to belong in a certain space. And we often see this from children who are not fully included in the general education classroom and maybe only come in episodically and maybe are treated more as a visitor than actually as a belonging member of that grade level or of that class. So really the belonging uncertainty is coupled by the idea that you aren't always there, that your membership is tentative and uncertain. So type in the chat, think of a student in your building who may be experiencing belonging uncertainty right now. What's one signal they're giving you?
You can go ahead and just type in the chat as we are moving forward. We'll just give you another few seconds to read that prompt. Think of a student in your building who may be experiencing belonging uncertainty right now. Um, what's one signal that they're giving you? And then as you are doing that, we are going to have you access our Padlet. And so, Sarah, if you could share that link in case you don't want to scan the QR code, you can go ahead and click on the link, and that will take you to our Padlet, which has a number of different resources. It has what we're going to be talking about in a second with our planning for implementation form, and then our readiness assessment, selecting priorities and not priority to practice. So these are some of the documents that we'll be working through today. Okay, so everyone ready? All right, ready to move on, Carolyn?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, here we go.
Thanks, Tim.
Hmm.
So the first document in that Padlet is this implementation form, and this is not meant to be a comprehensive form. It's really meant to be a place where you can just capture your thoughts as we go through today's presentation so that you have a place to kind of begin the thought process of how you could make your school or your school district a more inclusive school district or school system. So it goes through a series of steps towards inclusion
Se
and
usa
what
una serie de
activities.
pasos. Hello, this is the interpreter.
Sorry, VFS, can we get the interpreter allocated to the Spanish channel, please? Sorry for the interruption, Caroline.
That's okay. So this form is not to be meant to be a comprehensive thing. It's just meant to be something that you can use to capture some thoughts as we go through today's presentation. And if you click on the form and you click at the three dots at the top right-hand corner, there's a an option to download. So if you want to type directly onto the form, you will have to download it in order to access it. Okay, so these are some things that you can do to increase the sense of belonging in your classroom or your school community and to decrease that belonging uncertainty. One is to build empathy beyond acceptance, that really the community of the school and the community of the classroom is one where each learner is valued for their unique talents and gifts and celebrated for those things. Even if those unique talents and gifts may set them apart in terms of the way that they enter the classroom and the way that they're received by their peers, that the difference is celebrated. That you foster that communication about similarities and differences, that difference is expected and it's honored, and that we don't want to all be the same and replicas of each other, that we celebrate difference in our school community, in our classroom. Creating some kind of social reference group like peer ambassadors that ensures that welcoming climate is constantly fostered in the classroom. And develop support for culturally responsive instruction, understanding the variety of learners that enter your classroom and being responsive to them instructionally, using cooperative learning strategies that engage peers with one another, and that learners become accustomed to knowing that they will engage with all members of their classroom community at some point in time during the school year. That we foster this idea of working together to learn, and that we work with anyone in the classroom, not just with a particular peer set or our favorite friends. And that we stop labeling children and classrooms, that we really work hard not to put labels on people, on educators, or on learners, and that we promote cross-group work. So those are some things that you can do. So I'm going to get back to this idea of what inclusion is. And it's these three big pillars for us. That sense of belonging,
Hello,
that
this is the
sense of
interpreter.
that meaningful participation, and that all learners are accessing grade level standards or grade level aligned standards. That's the point of the learning part of that graphic that we showed earlier, is that we are lifting all students and elevating them towards those grade level standards.
Can I jump in here, Carolyn?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So one of the things about me, if you've heard me talk before, is I came from a segregated, self-contained environment. So I was a teacher in a self-contained class every single year I was in a classroom teacher. I was in a self-contained class, and so I was passionate about inclusion. Wanted my students to, um, go into regular general education classrooms, and so oftentimes I would think about inclusion as inclusive placement, right? So how much time are they in a particular area, a particular space? And as my understanding of inclusive practices grew, the more I realized that participation in what the class was doing is just as important as that they're there. Uh, are students feeling like they're a part or a member of that class community? That is also a really important part. And then like the final thing is, what are they actually learning in that class? Are they in a class on the side of the class or in the back of the class with their own paraprofessional working on something completely different? And so a lot of times when I was a teacher, just having them in the room was good enough for me. I was like, that's a win. But as we're thinking about real systems change, how we're moving just from inclusive placement, moving beyond, these are the things that we're talking about. These are the things that we want people to be stretched on. So when I'm going to move the slide here. When we talk about what inclusion really means, we are really talking about setting a vision, right? So each and every child who lives here in this community belongs in my school. So I am a school leader, and the kids in my neighborhood, in this neighborhood, go to my school, and they are our students. How am I going to educate our students? Um, all children are general education students, and some of those students receive services, special education services. Um, the vision is no inclusion classes. Students are not separated by label. If there is an inclusion class, that means what are the other classes? Services are delivered through a collaboration between general education and special education teachers. Um, and some might say that they're just teachers, right? Just teachers serving kids, and some of those students receive specialized services. Um, and then the extension of that vision is the planning for students who need more, and planning specifically, thinking in mind of membership, participation,
Okay.
and learning,
Hello, can you hear me?
and interventions for students who need them. So not just students who are specifically labeled with a disability or who qualify for special education services, but
Estudiantes.
how is the school supporting learners across the grade level? Is the interpreter getting everything they need?
I think he has been
Sarah?
allocated the channel now. I'm sorry about that.
All good, all good. I just like if we just need to pause and have them get what they need, then it's all good. Okay. Okay, so in night, how are we doing on time? Because I feel like we have about 40 minutes left, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we get through all of our stuff. I'm gonna speed through some of this stuff because I really want to hear what everyone else is thinking about this. So this is really background information. In 1988, MCIE partnered with the Maryland State Department of Education, reflecting on like transformative school practices, and so they identified some key practices. The first thing is um, like leadership, right? uh, are leaders sharing decision-making power with their staff? Are they extending core values around inclusiveness and quality to other initiatives and students? And are they actively promoting learning communities? So leaders are so important. Um, I mean, this is like when you look at like the literature on leadership, right? Um, Having a collaborative leader that doesn't just tell people what to do, but actually bring people in to have ownership over um, over what they're doing. If it's a classroom or if it's a nonprofit organization, right? Leaders are the ones that promote change throughout whatever they're working with. So the leaders are so important, and that is something that we see all the time when we work with schools. Our students are the students' assignments, are they purposeful? And are they in natural proportions? Are students being scheduled in natural proportions across grade levels? Um, and are the staff um, supporting learners across grade levels and not being clumped into just one or two classrooms? And then using information from the school to engage staff in discussion about diversity, inclusion, collaboration, and practice, and really building the capacity of the leaders in that school. So leaders are in charge of making sure that they're building a culture of belonging for not only the students, but of the staff and attending to the needs of the staff. And then other aspects is the school, does the school have high academic expectations? Or is everyone presuming competence? Is there evidence-based instructional practices? There's team-based collaboration, database decision making, and just acceptance, care, and value and belonging in all relationships. Um, let's keep going. And then after all of these things are taken into consideration, what is the district actually doing, right? So when we are working with a school district, we facilitate establishing a district leadership team that understands this idea of relationship building, meeting with principals, making sure to build the capacity of the principals, and then also going through this readiness assessment, which I think Carolyn is going to talk about in a minute. And a lot of that is building relationships, but it's also digging into the data, right? What kind of students do we have in a particular school, and using data to drive decision making. All right, Carolyn, let's talk about TA.
So this is just a diagram of our technical assistance and planning process. And as Tim talked about, we have a district implementation team, as well as a school implementation team. So as the district identifies schools that are going to become demonstration sites, they're providing district oversight and monitoring the district data and district policies and practices that may or may not be aligned with inclusive practices. And we're working with the school team, with the district team on those policies and the direction that they're giving to the schools. And then the school has an implementation team. And both of those teams are looking at data. The school's looking at their specific data, and the district's looking at district data. And we're using that data to make decisions about what are going to be our priorities as we action plan to go from more segregated service delivery model to an inclusive service delivery model. And we're working with both the district and the school to make that action plan and to select those priorities around students and staff. So around students, we're looking at you need to start small to scale up. So we typically start at 1 or 2 grade levels in a school, or if it's a middle or a high school, we may start with a particular course or a particular series of courses. Maybe we're looking at the English courses first, or maybe the mathematics courses first. So that is a little bit different process when you talk about secondary schools, because it tends to be more around content than it is around grade level. And who are the learners that have been historically segregated in that grade level or from those courses? And we do learner planning around students with complex support needs who have typically been segregated from the general education setting, and setting up a specific plan for those students as they return to the general education setting. And then also simultaneously working towards a plan of action for what the staff need to be supported in receiving those students, because the ultimate goal for us when we work with schools and districts is both student success and educator success. So we know that that inclusion will not work if the educators do not have the capacity to receive students who they have not typically had in their general education classrooms. And we want to ensure that the educators have capacity to receive students and the students are appropriately planned for. So that all goes into this action planning process that we're going to show you in a little bit later. And then we actually do that design. We design the learner planning process around each specific learner who's historically been segregated, who's going to return to general education. And then also we design the professional learning that the educator is going to receive to ensure that they have capacity to receive those learners. And all of that is embedded in that action plan that the district and the school teams are monitoring throughout the school year.
And if you have any questions about this process, or if you just want to know a little bit more about what we do after, this deluge of information, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to have a conversation about what this actually looks like, in your context.
So in the first year that we're working with a school and a district, we're looking in the first half of that year at the data that will drive our priority selection. And data is about the attitudes and beliefs of the educators who are currently working in that school environment, as well as what they believe the strengths of their school are, as well as the opportunities for growth that they feel will bring the most high leverage change to the building. And as we're making those decisions, we're addressing certain priorities within that action plan. So this is the priority selection form that we use. So they list all the priority areas. And then we have a discussion with the school team about if we improve this priority, will it impact our ability to be inclusive? Will the improvement be interesting to teachers? Will teachers be motivated around it? Is it going to be something that they want to engage with? Will it impact child outcomes? Will leadership support it? And often educators are looking at school leaders as well as district leadership. Will they support this priority in our school plan? And is this an area that aligns with district priorities, right? Are we developing an action plan that also mirrors what the district action plan looks like? And then the team basically votes and they choose the top 2 or 3 priorities because we know that you cannot focus on 15 priorities all at once. You have to boil it down to those few priorities that we can really get behind and design a robust plan around. So then we go through the defining and selecting process, which is taking those priorities and defining what are the actions that we will see if this priority is selected. In the best case scenario, what outcomes will indicate success of implementation around this priority? And worst case scenario, what will happen if we fail to implement it? And what are the conditions needed for success? And then ultimately, after we answer all these questions, can we select this as a priority? Is it something that will work for us as an action plan priority? And then then we go through the preparation for action planning. And it's a facilitated discussion through a gallery walk or a pair share or other efficiency method using chart paper. And we just ask the questions. Do we have a clear, observable definition of the practice we want to implement? How did we identify and describe the current knowledge and skills? What's the baseline? What are we working from to build up towards? Who are the people? Who and what and when are really important questions to answer because a lot of times we're good at discussing things and admiring things, but we don't necessarily then assign this is going to be this person's responsibility and this will get done by this date. So really having a specifics around those things in terms of the action planning.
Sorry, I'm muted.
That's okay.
I want to jump in on this
Sure.
as well, Carolyn, because I had a chance to go up to Maryland a few weeks ago to
Right.
see some school implementation meetings, and um, this like this is a lot of words and a lot of questions, and you may be thinking like, well, how does this actually do anything? So one of the big takeaways for me for sitting in these implementation team meetings is the questions and the wrestling of just mindset and beliefs that happen in these meetings is so powerful. The just the earnest and honest and transparent questions that teams have about implementing inclusive practices, you can really see hearts and minds change just within a meeting or two. And to see that a school district has been meeting regularly, hopefully monthly, but maybe a little bit less, having these discussions and having the agency to create plans for themselves and then to see those plans through as it goes through year to year, it is such a powerful transformation to see that in action. And so I was able to see that and really experience those conversations, and it really, like, this is the work. like like having the moving students, changing inclusive placement numbers and all that stuff, that is what kind of gets the spotlight, because it's like, oh, we moved from 65 to 75% or something. That's great. But this is really where the work happens, the planning and the implementation. So I don't know if you want to say anything else about that, Carolyn, but
Yeah, I'm just going to highlight that this is a very strategic planning process. So anybody that's done any amount of studying around the idea of strategic planning knows that in order to really be strategic in the implementation of change, it requires a vast amount of not just data collection, but discussion and action planning. And really, the implementers of the change have to be invested in the change. And it can't just be the leader telling everybody to change. It really has to be what Tim's describing, this investment of energy around where is it that we're driving towards that vision that Tim described, right? If we're going towards this vision, what really has to happen in order for us to get there collectively? And what is my role and what is our collective role? And it really, the ownership of that is the powerful part of this whole process, is when people truly become invested in that, making certain that we meet with success. So this is our priority to practices guide for implementation. Certainly not going to read through all of this, but wanted to make certain it was here as a resource. But stage one is discovery and design. It's what are we going to do? And then what are the practices? When all the boxes are checked and we move to this stage, what are the things we agree to as the practices? And why are we agreeing to participate in this? Why are we doing this? It's the compelling why. It's everybody has to understand in their gut what that why is, and they all have to be invested in why we're doing this and be able to explain it. That's that elevator speech, right? It's that 30-second spot that you can tell somebody, this is why we're doing this. This is why this is important. And this is why we're willing to invest our time and energy in this work. And installation is the thing that comes at the final stage. All right, I'm sorry. And this is again, the priority to practice guide continued. It gives you, we talk through strengths, areas critical development, and areas that we also need to learn more about. So it's a true investment of time and energy around a lot of conversation and questions, and really identifying what are the things that are going to drive us towards this change, and what are potential barriers that we need to mitigate for. And sometimes those barriers emerge as system barriers. And that's why it's important also to have that district leadership and implementation team. Because if there's a district policy that makes it so we're less inclusive, so for example, if a child has to ride specialized transportation, does that transportation go into their neighborhood and pick up them as well as their siblings and the other children in their neighborhood? Or is that child forced to ride a separate bus to school? And is that child treated from the onset of arrival at school differently because of the mode of transportation they have to use? That's a very significant district level practice that can impact my feelings of belonging and true inclusion when I arrive at school in the morning. So it's really identifying those things that we have control over, as well as those things that maybe are district things that we're going to need to ask the district to prioritize in their plan. And then this whole idea of when we set this action plan, we talk about what we need to do in terms of planning for learners. So, who are the learners, and what is the specific planning process we're going to use to ensure full inclusion in the general education classroom? So, that's part of the action plan is listing out who those learners are and identifying when we're going to do learner planning and who are going to be the participants in that child's education team for the learner planning process. And so it targets the grades, the subjects, and the actual students. And then the next step of the action plan is around the educators and how we plan for the learning of the educators and building their capacity. So again, on your Padlet is this readiness assessment. And so this is just a quick assessment that we put together to kind of identify the level of readiness that a district or a school may be at in terms of the start of if they're wanting to move towards more inclusive practices, how ready are they as a school or a district? Because as Tim said earlier, leadership is a really critical part of this whole process. You know, the leaders have to be able to model the mindset, model the beliefs, and model the actions and activities that have to occur in order for true change to happen. And that starts at the level of the superintendent of board of education as well as school leadership. Those leaders have to be ready and they have to be ready to lead the change process. And then that trickles down to the educators and support staff also in assessing their readiness. So that
I'm
tool is on your Padlet.
Yes, that is. And again, if you have any questions specifically about how this might apply to your school or district, please reach out. We'd love to have a conversation with you. And I'm just looking at the time, Carolyn. I'm wondering if we can move, I go down
Yes.
to this one. So you
Okay.
can kind of, because this is kind of an
Just a sample.
example of what this might look like at a particular school. Um,
Hmm.
yeah.
So this is just a sample of an action plan, an actual action plan in a school district. So it's kind of how the action plan looks as it has been developed. And then,
Yeah, this was a particular this was when we were working with Calvert County.
yes,
This
yes,
was a few years ago now. Um, but yeah, you can see that the action steps that the particular school had put together, and then who was going to be, I guess, own those action steps, and then by when was it going to happen, and then as the school met as a team as they moved on, then they provided status updates. And so
correct.
by the end of the school year, you have a document that says this is what I've done, in this process. And the priority that they selected was scheduling with natural proportions. So, and I think. Oh yeah, we have some of our staff and former staff on there.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I'm gonna move on to the next one here. So what's standing in the way?
So this is when we are with our, in our experience, there are three big things that stand in the way. Why do districts continue to segregate and not move towards this idea of full inclusion? The first is fear. People are afraid of the unknown. They don't know what it looks like. They don't even know what that'll mean for them. And that fear is also fueled by the feeling that I don't have the capacity to do this. I've never had learners with complex support needs in my classroom before, and I'm afraid that I don't have the skills. So it's the fear as well as I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I have the capacity. And then it's attitudes and beliefs is what do I fundamentally believe about children with disabilities and how and where they should be educated? And really, changing hearts and minds is a lot of the work that we do. It's really that whole mindset shift and really coming to a shared understanding with staff around why they should be compelled to move in this direction.
You're muted, Tim.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to be respectful, getting the sound, so what is standing in the way for you in your school or district. You can put an emoji. You can go ahead and type in the word. Um, fear. I don't know what to do, but I'm afraid of resistance or pushback or a lack of skill. I want to move forward, but don't have the tools or the training yet. Or is it the belief system? Adults in my building just don't believe that all students can belong. So just put in the chat what is standing in the way in your building or district as we're moving forward with our presentation. Um, so all means all, and you know, every means every student. Um, is that the belief in your school? And I remember something I wrote a long time ago about where are the inclusive schools, right? Where are the inclusive schools that are pushing and moving inclusive education forward? Inclusion, full inclusion certainly is possible. But I want us to reframe what an inclusive school is. An inclusive school isn't just 100% of kids are included in inclusive placement in a school all the time, all day, every day, but they're not being supported, right? So are the students valued, supported, and are being provided services in an effective, equity-based way as much as possible to achieve this idea of all means all?
Yeah, and if Tim, if I can add, at the beginning of this, I shared a little bit about how I got into the work, which was not because I had a compelling belief system or set of skills. It was I was told to be in charge of the work. But what ended up happening was I watched the lives of children fundamentally change, their educational trajectory fundamentally change as a result of moving from being in a segregated setting to being a belonging member of their neighborhood school and classroom community. I watched the change of their literally educational pathway happen. And it compelled me to the fact that this is a civil rights issue, that when we remove learners from the general education classroom, they experience school in a completely different way than they would if they did not have a disability. And that's just not right. And that when we give them the opportunity and we presume their competence and give them access to the grade level standards in the general education classroom and to their peers, how much further they are, how much more success they're able to accomplish, both educationally and socially.
So in the interest of time, I want to get to these 11 steps for a
Yeah.
successful inclusion. Okay, so um, I think the ones that I'm not going to read all 11 of them, but I think the ones that jump out to me is uh, review what's happening in your school or district right now. Like what is happening? Use the readiness assessment that we have, and then contact us and be like, hey, let's talk about this. And then what is the leadership look like at your particular school or district to rally around that we need a change? When I was a teacher, I didn't have the power to make the change that I wanted to. So, how can you get allies in your school or district at the leadership level to move inclusive education forward? And then going a little bit down the list, how are families engaged in this process with you? Because again, speaking as a classroom teacher, it was the families that often were the ones that were pushing the district to move toward more inclusive practices. And frankly, that's sometimes why we are in a particular school district because because families, not just one, but a group of them had been saying, "Hey, we need to change at the district level." And then I don't know, Carolyn, is there something on this list that jumps out at you that is really important?
I do think that I believe that conducting the professional learning is really important, and that people understand the research around As educators, we are steeped in all the best practices, the latest research-based best practices. Right now, a lot of us are responding to what's been told to us about the science of reading, and how maybe instructionally the way that we were approaching reading 10 years ago is not the way that we should be approaching it now. And we jump right in, but we don't pay any attention to the research around inclusive practices and the impact that that has on students with disabilities as well as students without disabilities. So using that research as a shared understanding piece, I think is really important because it helps with the why.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Okay. All right. We have just some data to look at. I wanted for this is Cecil County, and Carolyn, if you wanted to explain
Yeah, this
is.
is the district that I previously worked for. I was in that district for 30 years. And for context, the school system is about 16,000 students, 29 schools. So it took us about almost a decade to fully implement the change process in the district, because you're talking about 29 schools and you were talking about a high level of segregation. We had regional programs where we had to plan for students' return to multiple different schools. So this process was very robust in the district. So we started with MCIE in the early 2000s. You see the blue bar, that's about where the starting point was. And then you'll see that at the height of our work with MCIE, we reached, this is based on the least restrictive environment data, the percentage of students in general education classrooms, 80% or more of their day. And this district still sits about between 89 and 90% today. And this is obviously 2026, and this chart ends in 2010. So it really did result in long-term systemic change that has been sustained.
And then
And
here
then
are numbers.
Somerset County is a district that we've worked more recently with. And we started the process with them in the early 2020s. And they went from, as you can see, they have realized some real significant improvements in their outcomes in terms of their data around students who are in general education.
And so this is where I'd love for you to think about what we've talked about, any of the things, any of the tools, any of the ideas that we talked about in, the last, 30 or 40 minutes. What's one thing that, just type it in the chat, what's one thing that you will do in the next 30 days to move inclusive education forward in your school or district? And then, Sarah, I don't know if there were any questions or anything. eh, if anyone has any questions, we are happy to discuss that for the last 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, feel free to throw any questions in the chat. I haven't seen any at the moment. But yeah, please do fire away.
Let's see. I, I just, is it Adria? It says step one, call us. So happy to do that. Let's set up a call. All right, we've got some great steps here. Um, my district still has a moderate severe program. Is there a targeted plan for this population of students? Carolyn, can you speak about um, in our work with districts, um, the strategy is not to say we're getting rid of segregated programs.
Right. So
You would think that would be the strategy, but it's not. So what is the
that's not
strategy?
that's not typically that's we don't come in and say that, and that's not the strategy, right? What we do is we say the district decides which schools we're going to start with, and then we start with particular grade levels in that school, and we talk about 100% of the kids, 100% that should be in that grade level in general education are not for some reason, whether it's because they have complex support needs, or maybe they just have some type of maybe they're in a resource setting and are not as impacted by their disability. And we talk about every single one of those children and say, why are they not in general education? And what will it take to plan for their return to gen ed? So as a result of working with a school over the course of several years, and it usually takes us 3 or 4 years to become for a school to become fully inclusive. Some of it depends on the size of the school. Some of it depends on number of students, number of variables that are going on, but usually 3 to 4 years. And by the end of that, we have talked about 100% of the kids that maybe are not in that school because they're in a segregated program of some sort, or maybe just not in gen ed. And we return back to that child if the decision of the team is made that we're not going to plan for that learner right now for whatever reason. And typically, the reasons are either that the family is completely opposed to it, right? Because we're not about disrupting families, so we honor the voice of the families in this process. Or sometimes it's because the child has pervasive behaviors that are dangerous, that the root cause of those behaviors has not been identified at that point. But by the end of the process, we have talked about all of those kids in those segregated programs. And ultimately, the more kids you move out, the less viable that program becomes, because it is very expensive to try to sustain inclusion as well as sustain segregation. Like, that's really something that is very difficult to do in terms of fiscal resources. Did I answer that, Tim?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes. To be honest, I was only half listening to you because I was reading the chat. But so a couple things that are jumping out, um, coming out at jumping out at me. Rebecca says, I am a very visual learner and I would love to see examples of our children with extensive support needs being included. Are there any good YouTube videos showing inclusion? This is a constant struggle for everyone to have examples. And so what I would say is there's a few different barriers. A lot of it has to do with student privacy. And so we've worked with many districts, and they are not always they don't always want to have their classrooms filmed. And so that is something we're trying to work through. And in fact, we're having a summer institute in near Baltimore on June 23rd and 24th, in person, and we'll be able to show some of some examples for our audience that are coming together. But a lot of times our families and schools, they just don't want that posted, on a public forum. So that is the barrier. I don't have a good answer for that. I wish there were more video examples. But so I appreciate that question.
And and we do know that the greatest thing that changes attitudes and beliefs is seeing it in action. Like, when you see children who are included and you see the power of that, that is the thing. And often we're asked at the beginning of this process, is there a school system we can go to see this happening, right? Because
Mhm.
people want to see it in action. And that can be very challenging. And even visiting school systems can be challenging because school systems have a level of tolerance for visitors, and we can get some visitors around some, but the actual footage is the thing. Tim, I'm seeing somebody asking about talking about the learners. We are not
Yeah.
part of the IEP teams. Like,
Mhm.
that's not our role. The learner planning process that we use is a unique process to us, and it is not part of the IEP process. It is a discussion and it really is a strengths-based discussion around the learner and it's about, if we were to include this learner in general education, what would that look like and what supports would that learner need? And what would the educators need in order to meet with success? So it is not, we are not decision makers in school systems, and we are certainly not decision makers at IEP team meetings.
Yeah, and the learner planning process is modeled after making action plans.
Yes.
If you're familiar with Jack Pierpoint and his team at at Inclusion Press and all the things the wonderful things they've been doing in Toronto, and that I mean that is his work and his team's work has reverberated all across the inclusive education field. So gosh, there was something else I was going to say, but I don't remember now. So let's see if there is anything else. Oh, I did want to I remember what I wanted to say. Okay, so to the point about um where where are some good like videos and examples. So my friend Kathy Davis at Ruby Bridges, they have been working on a documentary. The name escapes me right now, but Ruby Bridges in Washington State, and I believe that's coming out like in the next, I would say 3 to 6 months. I don't know exactly when, but I had a chance to preview that, and it's fantastic. And they are a fully inclusive school in the state of Washington, and you know, the state of Washington has a concerted effort by their state education agency to move inclusive practices forward, and they have a lot of support. Um, Supporting innovative practices, from what I know and remember about the work in California, is coming up with um, the model demonstration sites. So what Carolyn was saying, having places to visit, to physically go and visit and to see inclusive education in action really does move people. So that's like, if that's the best thing, then, the videos are the next best thing. Any other questions? We're almost out, and I think Sarah is gonna.
Thank you for that plug there, Tim. You're doing our work for us. Demonstration
Always,
sites.
always.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So if your district is a SIP grantee at the moment, people do have access to those demonstration sites with a school team. We do encourage people to come with a team of learners, so it's not just like one person at each site. Um, but if there are no other questions, I wanted to take a moment to wrap up. And thank you so much, Caroline and Tim, for such an informative session. It's really helpful to hear the ideas and the resources and then the experience of actually having gone through it. There's a lot of logistics to some of this, but I really value the authenticity with which you express, like, I then saw children's lives changed. Like I can hear that motivation, that inspiration. And then also the steps that you shared, recognizing that wherever people are on this journey, there is somewhere on those 11 steps that we can be working. If you feel like leadership's a barrier, there are other things that we can currently be doing, including engaging with families and involving our own research, being at things like this. So thank you very much, everyone, for your commitment to helping us support create inclusive environments for all students. For today's session slides, if you want to access them later on, you can find them on our agenda page. And the recording of today's session will be available there for the next 30 days. And then here on after should be on our website. Be sure to check out our exhibition booths. MCIE have a great booth with some resources. The Inclusion Conversation Starters was a resource that I saw there that I thought was super useful, just as like a way to get some people going. And I could see people rehashing that to use within their own teams to try and have some like shared readings and discussion comments. So thank you for that. And there's many other resources on the exhibition booth areas from a few of our different participants. Social media, if you're into it, please don't forget to share your socials and tags. I'm going to take a screenshot of everyone's face right now because I'm just remembering, so we can do a little hello from everyone on the socials. Okay, so if your camera's on, I'm taking a photo of you. 3, 2, 1, smile. Thank you. But yeah, share with our SIP hashtag, which is hashtag SIPCon 2026. And then remember, at the end of the event, the top attendees on our leaderboard will receive their pick of an inclusive book bundle, or you can have your registration fees paid for one of the upcoming conferences. It's an MTSS one in Anaheim or the Kaleski in Burlingame. So the winner gets to choose. I'm going to tell you, there are some people that are hounding it. They are looking through those resources, but you've got some time. The platform stays open so you can access all those things at a time that suits you. Thank you once again, everyone, for being here, and for Caroline and Tim for their presentation. Thank you to Mary and Suzanne, our ASL interpreters, and Diego, our persevering Spanish interpreter who stuck with us. Thank you so much to everyone. Bye for now. We appreciate you.